So at some point you have probably asked yourself, is it really possible to know somebody completely? If you know somebody for a really long time, can you really ever know that person 100%? I mean, think about your closest family members, your friendships. You've known some of these people for a really, really long time. You might even know them better than most other people. But do you really know them as well as you think that you do? Is that even possible? So I studied this type of idea in graduate school for many, many years. I studied person perception, which is just this idea that we perceive other people and we make perceptions about them. We make judgments about them. We try to figure out what other people are like. And I'll just sum it up for you right now. Basically, when it comes to really knowing somebody, you can know somebody super, super well. You can know someone for a really long time and possibly know that person better than anybody else knows them. But you will never know them completely. It's an impossible task. It's just not realistic. Knowing somebody to that extent, heck, even knowing yourself to that extent, it's just not realistic. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's video, this notion of how well you can really know somebody and whether it's possible to know somebody completely. And here's the issue. No matter how long you know somebody, no matter how many situations you see somebody in, no matter how many questions you ask them, people can and do still surprise you. An example I like to use is with a friend I had back in college. We'll call her Jackie. Jackie was really quiet. I knew her mostly through school. You know, we did a couple different things together, but mainly she was very introverted, very reserved, very quiet, very thoughtful. She mostly just liked to study, do things by herself. You know, we'd hang out here and there, but mostly she was just a really quiet and reserved person, which is fine. I'm kind of the same way. But then one day I ended up taking Jackie to a party, and she got a little bit of alcohol in her, and oh my gosh, like suddenly she was this wild party animal. She was suddenly this huge extrovert. She was the life of the party. She was so outgoing, and I was completely shocked. It's like her personality took a 180 just from drinking a little bit, being at this really crazy party. She was a totally different person. But the issue is I'd never seen her in that type of situation before, so I just didn't know that that was part of her personality. I wouldn't have known that if I didn't take her to that party that day. So even if you think you know someone really well, they can still surprise you, especially if you put them in an unusual or weird situation that you haven't seen them in. If you haven't seen them in every situation, you're not going to be able to predict their behavior completely accurately. But what can you actually know about somebody? Well, based on person perception research, which is what I did for many, many years, you can know quite a lot about somebody. In fact, when it comes to their personality, it's actually not very difficult to figure out what someone's personality traits are like, at least for certain personality traits. And time definitely matters, so the longer you know somebody, generally the much better you're going to get to know them over time. So time does make a difference. I will say that for some personality traits like extroversion, if you don't know what that is, I'll link my Big 5 video up here for you so you can check that out. But when it comes to this trait of extroversion, which includes things like outgoingness, assertiveness, talkativeness, sociability, it's a really easy trait to figure out in people. So some research has actually suggested that you can figure out how extroverted a person is just by looking at a picture of them. That's how many externalized cues people put off about their extroversion. It's the way that they dress. It's the way that they hold themselves. It's how they choose to look. There's all these things that people do to themselves to display outwardly how extroverted that they are. And that's really interesting. You know, let's say you don't believe the picture thing. We still know that even just 30 seconds with a person is enough time to figure out how extroverted they are. And when it comes to other traits like conscientiousness and agreeableness, we typically need a little bit more time. Maybe seeing people in certain types of situations or talking about certain things. And then when it comes to traits like neuroticism and open-mindedness, these are much more difficult traits to judge unless you know somebody a little bit better, just because they do tend to be more internalized, more intimate types of traits that aren't just going to be externalized as readily as, say, extroversion is. So when it comes to a person's personality, not really all that hard to figure out. Even things like personal values, beliefs, perspectives, you can still learn about those things over time. You might have to ask a person more questions or see them in more situations to figure out those types of things. It might not be as readily apparent. Of course, it depends on the person. But generally speaking, probably going to have to get to know a person a little bit better to figure those things out. But it is still very possible. And a lot of the time, if you can pull more intimate information out of a person, so let's say you've known someone for a while, they've really warmed up to you, they're going to be more willing to share these types of things with you compared to somebody that you're just meeting. So the more intimate that you are with somebody, the more intimate your relationship is with somebody, the more information you're going to get about that person. And then naturally over time, of course, you're also going to see that person in more types of situations, and you're going to get to know them a lot better. But here's the caveat. Even when people are willfully offering up information about themselves, the assumption is that all the information that they're giving you is good information and it's accurate information. And there is kind of an issue with that because our own perspectives of ourselves can sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes really differ compared to how other people see us. Because we ourselves see ourselves in very specific ways. And we might not realize all the things about ourselves that maybe our closest family members and friends realize, because we're constantly trapped in our own bodies. We have all these emotions, we have these beliefs. They can sometimes cloud our view of ourselves. So other people might sometimes see things that we don't. So even when you're asking a person about themselves, sometimes their own perspective still might not be the greatest information. But you are learning about how that person sees themselves, and that is still very valuable information. And then, of course, you're never going to see a person in all types of situations. You're never going to see them when you are not there, or you're never going to see them when they're by themselves, right? There's going to be situations that are just not really practical for you to be able to see this person in. So you're only ever really going to know them while you are there, and also what they choose to share with you. So how can you know somebody better? Well, I would say definitely try to do lots of things with that person. So let's say you have a work friend. Don't just see them at work, okay? People are very specific kinds of people at work. They tend to be more focused, more organized, more reserved. They're probably not truly going to be themselves. I guess it sort of depends on your work environment, of course, and the person that you're talking to. But I would never trust that I really know somebody just based on a work environment. I would definitely want to get them out doing something else, whether it's, let's go to a restaurant after work, or invite them to my house to do something, or, let's go to a friend's house, let's go to a party, let's do something outside of this very restricted kind of space so that I can see this person in other types of situations and really get to know them. And if you really want to get to know someone, work on your relationship with them, because generally, when you know somebody for longer, you value that relationship, you know them more intimately, you are going to learn more about them naturally over time. It is a process. You're not going to get to know somebody really, really well in just a day. You can get an idea of what they're like. Certainly, you can learn things about them pretty quickly, but you're not really going to know them extremely well unless you put in effort into that relationship. So I did write a blog post about this. The link is in the description box down below. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. It does help my channel grow. Ding that notification bell if you want to be alerted as to when I upload videos, and subscribe for more psychology-related content. Thank you for joining me here today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.